Well, it is 9:30 here on the Eastern Coast, and we are going to RECON right now, and we're going to continue with our exercise. Today is May 5th. We're going to continue our exercise. If you go on a listing presentation, it's going to happen. If it hasn't happened to you already, sellers are going to get on, and buyers too, and ask their AI best friend, all right, I'm going to have an interview. What should I be asking? And so we're working through some of the questions you want to prepare for. Now, I don't know. I haven't talked to everyone here that's part of the coaches. Matt was tied up yesterday, so this is his first venture into this. However, I'm going to share with you, and you may not be able to read it, but that's okay. I'm just going to read it to you really fast. Chat came up with 8 categories of questions. Now, here's my thinking, guys. What if we spent time over the next couple of weeks working on these, both from a buyer and seller standpoint, which would give everyone here on RECON a framework of preparation to be able to handle about any type of question that would come your way. Now, I know there's about 50 or 60 questions and a probability of 50 or 60 million variations. However, if we can master the major ones, I think it might help you out. And the first thing we talked about yesterday was experience. Guess what we're going to be talking about today, you guys? It's going to be the seller is going to ask you, potential seller, about your pricing strategy. You're at the table. You know they're interviewing other agents. You know they've been to chat and they have a list of questions that they want to ask you. You already know that. Now they're going to ask you about your potential pricing strategy. Louise?
Yes, sir.
Who's the brave people ready to go?
Ellie is so brave on this Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, that is Cinco de Mayo. Awesome. Well, happy margarita to you. All right. Let's go.
Ellie and Don.
Hey, Ellie, how will you
Hi.
determine the recommended list price for my home?
How would I recommend a list price for your home?
Yes.
So, Don, first, let me just start with the beginning of this pricing strategy that I just presented to you. We have here is the data which shows exactly what the solds, which were actually tells us what the people were willing to pay and they have closed. They are relevant in a way but they are kind of let's say relevant for that time because now people they might be willing to pay more or less. What is interesting is the pendings because these are telling us in this moment what could potentially people are paying are willing to buy, and the actives actually acts like
Hang
your
on
competition.
just a second before Matt pulls his hair out. Matt, today is Tuesday, right?
It's Tuesday.
I'm
You
falling
have the
asleep.
flag, and I know you're probably wondering, we probably want to go back and say, Ellie,
Yep.
fewer
you go?
words. Go ahead, Matt.
Where are you going?
So he asked a question about my pricing strategy that I just presented to him, and so
Right.
the
Yeah, but
listing price.
you didn't come up for air.
Right. So here's the
I
problem
was
with
falling
that.
asleep.
The problem with what you just did is
Explaining.
you may have to explain some things like that. I do in my appointments. However, I make sure that we're side by side and that they're hearing what I'm saying. So it sounds something like this. Don, good question. Before I answer it, what assumptions have you made as to how a realtor determines the market recommended value for your home? He's going to answer it. You say, well, can I enlighten you? Okay, you see how I'm asking questions?
So you're
Okay.
you're kind of asking for a starting point, correct?
Right. Asking for a starting point. What do you understand? Before I answer you, what do you understand about how a realtor does X, Y, and Z? Okay. And then can I enlighten you?
Now we're all on a growth conveyor belt here, and we're still growing too. And there's a lot of familiar faces. Ellie is one of them. How many people that have been on and have been watching the growth of Ellie and others already noticed, okay, so we're working with her on going from maybe a Stephen King novel to maybe a Mad magazine. Okay. Y'all get that?
Right.
Yes.
So, all right.
Don.
So would you like a 30-second redo, Ellie, based on Matt's feedback?
Okay. So Don, can you share with me what do you understand about this, recommended list price?
Yeah, well, one of the agents gave us all this history of our neighborhood. I guess they're picking a price out of that. And the second one just was more picking a price like out of the air. Kept saying, I feel the house is worth this. So what's your pricing strategy?
Oh, that's a good question. Thank you so much for that, Don. The pricing strategy, it's important that okay, got it.
All right, it's going to take practice. That's okay. We'll go on to the next one.
All right.
We'll take practice. I mean, if we got Robert out of wonderful, we can get you out of a diatribe. Okay, let's go. Who's next?
Marvel.
Jose, are you game? If you are, you can go with me. If not, we can move on to Daniel.
Let's go, Luis.
So
Thank you.
one thing before Jose goes, I know his MO, and he's technically almost perfect. Jose, assume you've already asked, well, what other questions do you have? There's going to be 30 of them, at least 8 on pricing. We're working today not on the structure of getting everything on the table, but let's just assume you have to answer the question, okay?
That's a great question, Luis. Before I answer it, would you mind sharing what do you understand about pricing?
Well, I know that I'd like to get the best price for my home.
Anything else that you understand about getting the best price and pricing your home?
I don't know what you're looking for.
Okay.
We're looking for the agent to get us the best price, though.
Got it. Understand. Now, we have gone over what the market is currently saying to sellers in your neighborhood. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. We also looked at a couple properties that had been on the market for longer than they should have been, as we discussed. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it surprised me they were on the market as long as they were.
Yes. So to answer your question about my pricing strategy, I recommend that you position your home originally as the market is telling you to do so. So I ask you, where would you like to originally position your house?
Well, what do you recommend, though? I mean, I know we'd like to sell it for $1 million, but I don't think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I agree with you. I recommend that we listen to what the market is saying, and we looked at what the market is saying. What are you comfortable with originally positioning your house to sell?
I'll help you, Louise. What's the market saying?
Yeah,
It's saying anywhere from 750 to 800.
let's go with
Well-
800.
Okay. Now that we agreed to work together, may I share with you what's going to happen next?
Well, you
No.
didn't say we would.
No, she's got other questions.
What other questions do you have, Luis?
Jose, how do you adjust for condition, upgrades, location, lot size, view, and timing?
What makes you ask that question about adjusting, Luis?
Because one of our neighbors' houses sold, and I was shocked that it sold for the price that it did because it had gold faucets and lots of bird baths. I kind of felt like it should have sold for more.
Okay. And any other question about adjustments?
Time.
No, I was just curious. Like, I know everyone handles it differently. I'd like to know, how do you adjust for those things?
So time on that. So I would love it if a seller, I haven't had one in a while, Matt. I don't know about you. I know you turn down more people than probably Jennifer Aniston turns down for dates.
That's right.
750, 800. I don't think I've had a seller say 800 in like a long time. They might say 900. What's your feedback on that, Matt?
Well, I'm finding now that they've been getting the hell beat out of them for the past 4 years, that they've really taken a dose of reality. That's the ones I've been going on lately. Then there are some that are just completely pie in the sky, and I've got one lady right now who is consulting with chat. She's literally consulting. Like, we've had a conversation, and she's smoking sweet and low, and she's consulting with chat. And I just reminded her, chat's not going to write a check. So yeah, it's Now what I want to add here though, Jose, when she said best price, you need to extrapolate some stuff there. You need to be able to pull out, well, how do you determine that? How are we qualifying that and how are we determining that it is the right price or the best price? And then when she said adjust, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, I think you misunderstood what she meant. I think you thought she was talking about repositioning when the reality was she was asking you how you adjust values based on superior and inferior. Were you understanding that right?
Yes.
Okay, you were. Got it. Okay. So then when she asked that, she said, well, how do you adjust based on this, and this? I don't, I wouldn't, I wouldn't, I don't, I wouldn't ask what makes you ask that. I would just say, well, help me understand where the question, I'm guessing you have a reason. It sounds like you have a reason for asking that. Give the Chris Boss. It sounds like you have a reason for asking that because I want her then to tell me where it's coming from so that and I know that what makes you ask that it's kind of in the same vein, but I also don't want it to be perceived as combative at all. The what makes you ask that is like, well, I don't know how to answer it. It's, well, I'm guessing it sounds like you may have a reason for asking that.
Yes, if they have a series of questions, if they have one or two, you can get by with asking for clarity. But if you do it all the time, it'll get a little bit worn out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've already gone over the comparables, like we talk about all the time, and I'll talk about it after the halftime here, that we already know certain things. What's knowable, past sales, current availability, what's happened in the market, the trends, that's knowable. Most likely you've already kind of gone through that. So an easy answer would be, well, that's why we've talked about the range 750 to 800. And so this is where I would gain my clarity. Do you think that we've properly adjusted relative to your house and the houses we just looked at? Then she says, and this is going to happen, well, the neighbor down the street. Okay, well, let's talk about that. So again, that's how I would bring it up. Number next
is Daniel with Dawn.
Hey, Daniel, we've been through this before, and we kind of, with chat, we know the first 30 days is important, but what happens if my home doesn't get any activity in the first 2 weeks?
Well, I don't know. Well, let me ask you, Don, what would you like to do if we don't get any activity in the first 2 weeks?
I don't know. I'm going to be very nervous.
Yeah, well, I know Chad said the first 30 days is the most important, but is the first 30 days important to you?
Well, actually, the first 2 weeks is important to me.
Okay, and refresh my memory. Why is it important to you, Don?
Well, again, my wife's starting a new job in Tennessee in late June. So
I'm going to pause you just for a moment. I know I don't have the towel, but this is one of those answers, you guys. I'm glad you asked. What's behind me?
The three outcomes.
Glad you asked. Perfect time to bring it up. That answers it totally. So, any questions on that? No, Don, go back. I want you to ask the first question first. So just ask him now. There's the three outcomes. They'll put it in the chat. You should have that in your listing presentation. There's only three things that can happen. Ask him the first question. I'm anxious to hear what Daniel has to say.
The first question that I asked him just now?
No, the first one on the list, but I want each of you to ask that first.
Got it. Okay. So Daniel, how are you going to determine the recommended list price for my home?
Well, Don, what do you understand on how a good realtor determines a strategy on your home price?
That's kind of what I'm asking you.
Okay.
So
we've
but
gone through.
I understand that's what you're asking me, Don. What is your understanding customarily as to how that number's arrived at.
Oh, well, the last two agents went through, all the homes that had sold in the neighborhood and asking me to pick the lowest one. I don't know if I agree with that. I'm just curious, how are you going to determine where I start?
Yeah, well, so at the end of the day, it's up to you, right? My job is what I do is kind of give you a forecast of what perhaps may happen. But given that we've gone through the pending, sold, and actives, where do you feel like we can position your home to show value in the eyes of the buyer?
Well, I'm thinking 750 to 800.
Okay. Now, let's say we listed at 750, 2 weeks go by.
Time.
Go ahead. I'm trying to transition to three outcomes post price, but
Well, theoretically, you might have already gone over that, but there would be a transition. The only thing I'll say, then I'll give it back to Matt, is this. I've had time to think about these questions because I had to put them in. I got it from chat and I got to read them. So I thought, okay, what would I say? But reflectively, I say, well, let me ask you, if you were opening up a gas station on a corner and there were 3 more gas stations on the other corners, and they were asking $4.29 for regular, how would you price your gas? You guys see the parallel? Is there any other way? Or if you don't want to use gas, use milk, whatever. But I mean, the way we evaluate it, the past sales and our competition would kind of give us a stadium in which we should be playing ball in. That's kind of how we're doing it. And now I'm going to go use what Matt would be saying in a different way. It's like, okay, so you've talked to some other people. What have you learned?
Mm-hmm. Most
likely, you're going to get a range of value from about free to $1 million, which gives you an opportunity, Matt.
Right. So I always explain it when they ask me how do you determine it or what have you, which I actually don't get asked that a lot. It's interesting. But when it does get asked, I say, well, that's a good question. What is your understanding of how a realtor like myself arrives at the market recommended value? And they'll tell me, well, solds and blah, blah, blah. And, okay. Would you be open to me enlightening you as to exactly how it's determined? And keep in mind, there's no one realtor that can tell you exactly what the number is. If they try to tell you that they know it, run, because they're lying. But in order to sell a property, we have to sell it to 3 people: buyer, buyer's agent, bank appraiser. Can I expand? And then I'll go through what that means. That's how I explain it. And that's how I would recommend most people explain it.
Next.
Okay, next is Carlos and me. So I'm ready to switch up the question, Denny?
Just start with the first one. And then the second one can be whatever you want.
Hey, Carlos, how will you determine the recommended list price for my home?
Thank you for asking that, Louise. So I can understand you better. What do you understand how we come to that conclusion?
Just pause a second. The reason I'm going back to the same question is I want you to pick up the tips we're giving you. So we're going to run 85 right off tackle until we can hit the right hole. So good job on that. Keep going.
Okay, thank you.
Will you repeat the question, please?
Sure. To better answer your question so I can understand you a little bit more, what is your understanding about how we come to that conclusion of evaluation or pricing?
I think you guys base it on comps, right? What other homes have sold in the area?
Yes, absolutely. We have 555, which is 5 sold within the last 3 months or so, and 5 that's in the market, and the other 5 that's under the contract. And that's how we determine it, how to position your home in the market, Luis. Other than that, is there any other questions you have for me before we get things started?
Oh, you bet she does.
Yes, yeah. I don't know that the condition of those properties is comparable to mine, though. So how will you adjust for condition and upgrades and location, lot size, view, and timing?
Oh, that's a great question, Luis. typically what happens is we compare apple to apple, right? And may I ask you to, so I understand you a little bit more, what is really concerning you about this, about your home's condition and the comparables you just did?
Well, not that it's a concern. I just want to make sure that
Matt,
Hmm.
you want to think I got something for him? What do you want to think?
Well, I've got something, but it's not. Be very, very careful when you talk about 555, Carlos. And
Yes.
you're the only person I've ever heard say that, but in that way, because when you say 555, 5 sold, 5 pending, 5 active, then you put yourself right in a dark alley and they've got a gun of, well, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? And why did you use those? Guys, when I do a CMA, or I know Denny hates the word, but when I do my CMAs, I might have 35 friggin' properties in sold, 185 in pending, and 6,000 in active. I might not take every single one of them, but I will at least know they exist. That's all.
You guys, I have been in markets so bad that the 555 was a 666. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good line. I don't care who you are. So the reason I don't use a 555, and I made note of that, is you may be in an area that does not have 555. And now you're going to call 411 or 911. Okay. The
That's
other
right.
thing is, how do you guys, sometimes remember the parallel. All right. So how do you come up with strategy? Well, let me ask you, if you were a buyer and you were trying to figure out value of what homes are worth, how would you do that? You'd look around and find out what homes were selling for, right? Well, selling homes the same way, just kind of reverse. I mean, that's an easy way to step into that. Last thing I'm going to say here is this. When you've got someone who's got a series of questions, which this person does, be careful how many times you say great question.
Mm-hmm.
It only works once or twice.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say, if you check in the chat, Carlos, I went on a listing appointment last week where I had 000. There was nothing comparable, truly comparable. It was 100 acres in the middle of BFE. And if you know where BFE is, they have it in Canada too. Bumfuck Egypt. It was in the middle of nowhere. So 0 comparable properties. What did I have to do? I had to go with 5-acre properties, 10-acre properties, and we had to adjust into it. And then understand that in some of the markets, and I've said this before, guys, on here, while we don't like to coin ourselves as fishermen, but in markets like Denny's, markets like mine, markets like Louise, and markets like Dawn, you'll have some very high-end or very unique properties where you are fishing to find the market in some cases, for lack of a better term. So don't get caught in the dogma of, we're going to use 3 comps on this, 3, 3, and 5, 5, and 5. Doesn't work that way.
So we're going to be able to have, if whoever can say, I've got an extra few minutes afterwards for overtime. Can I give you some tidbits I want you to write down? Coaches may put it in the chat. And this goes in, I'm working on the final rewrite of my book, and I want to get these points out. Chats help me give me new ways to explain it. For example, you may not be able to read behind me because I just copied this from chat. Market value is estimated. Remember, we don't set the listing price, but we should know past, present trends, right? So we can give them a market range, even if they're interviewing other agents, according to past sale. The market range is not proprietary, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the weather person saying we're going to have a low of 72 and a high of 92. That's based on past, present trends. Here's the point I want you to understand. Market value is estimated. Your CMA is an estimated range based on past, present trends.
Mm-hmm.
Top value is revealed, and it's only revealed after you expose it. Now, I'm going to share something, Matt, that I've never shared before, and this is kind of good. I'm going to go back by this really quickly. Won't be in the chat. Maybe tomorrow I'll have it where you can take a picture of the slide. A spreadsheet cannot predict full force of human behavior. So this is the intangible. You can do all the research till the cows come home, but have you ever been surprised by how the market reacted, up or down, right? Here's why. It doesn't predict whether one buyer emotionally overvalues that home over what the comps say.
Mm-hmm.
They may want to live next to the grandbaby and they won the lottery. Money is not an issue. Number two, whether there happens to be maybe two buyers, which is a strategy. You can position it lower and you might have a little auction that may create a little bit more of a bump for the seller. Whether timing creates urgency. There could be a situation that you cannot predict in that market value range. Whether presentation produces a stronger reaction than expected. Maybe you do something to the home that causes it to make, relative to the competition, someone to, quote, love it. And the last one, whether the market stretches above the apparent range. And we saw that during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I have no problem with sharing the data. Here's the range. Based on that information, where would you like to position your home? And it was 750 to 8. They say 8, you're lucky. They may say 850, 950, 1.9. I don't know. But the issue is you can't say that won't happen. So this is just giving you some more ammunition. Go ahead and share basically the data. Have it there for the people to see, which is giving you prima facie evidence. You're not just winging it. And then understand that the market may surprise you either way. Does that make sense, you guys?
110%. The listing appointment I went on last week, where they started wanting 175 because of some made up math they did in their head and some offers that never were in writing before. The market was saying somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5, best case scenario with the wind to their back. And we discussed what that looked like. And I took the listing at 1.6. Why? Because like I said earlier, I had 000 to go off of. There are no 100-acre properties on the market. Top market value is not known until it's exposed. So I set the expectation. And I said, we can initially position here. Was here 1.5 or 1.6? I can't remember. But 1.5 or 1.6. And I said, here, we're going to initially position it here. And this is what we're going to look for. And if we don't get this response, it's not me, it's not you, it's the market saying we need to change something.
So while we're still recording this slide here, you can read. I think I made it bold enough you can read. This is the last thing. We'll go into some more conversation. We'll go into overtime. The CMA, yeah, Matt, you can say that. Just don't use CMA to your client, which basically I know it's supposed to be a competitive market analysis. I call it clairvoyant one, but
yeah.
CMA estimates probable value. The market reveals top value.
Right.
The professional standard is not certainty. Understand that. It took me 20 years to get to that point. I want you to get there now. You cannot, the only way you can be certain about what that home is going to sell for is you're going to have to ask less than it's worth. Let that soak in. The professional standard is evidence, strategy, and exposure, and disciplined interpretation of buyer response. Boom. Daniel, that leads into the 3 outcomes. The market will respond one of 3 ways.
Yep. It always speaks. It's a question of whether we like to listen.
That's right. In fact, yeah. So we have time for one more. You can let it roll. Who has a role play, or if you want to have a discussion on this, this is a very salient point to your success as a listing agent.
Robert with Don.
Robert, how are you going to determine the recommended list price for my home?
Well, Don, let me ask you, well, in your mind, what have you determined is the strategy for establishing the price?
Try it again. I know that wasn't the way you wanted to ask it. Try it again.
So Don, tell me in your mind, what is your strategy?
Well, I don't want it to sit here. Done this before unsuccessfully. That's why I'm being really hard with these questions.
Robert is an advanced guy here. I still think that's a little bit on the outside of where he should go. I mean, you're going into the doctor, you're hurting, and the doctor says, "Well, what do you think we should do?"
How do you think we should patch up this gunshot wound? So I'll give you the exact words and then we'll run. So, Don, I appreciate the question. Before I answer it concisely, what is your understanding of how market recommended values are determined?
What you're asking for is a starting point.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if I said, would you please explain to me why the moon landing was a fake? Well, you'd have to ask me what other conspiracy theories I happen to believe in, right? Or something. Where is my starting point on that topic? So it's not turning the tables asking, well, I like that. How do you fix the gunshot wound? So
Yeah. Well, so the question is, before I answer it, so that I understand what is your understanding of how the market recommended value is determined by agents? Then you'll establish the baseline. Go ahead, Denny.
So do you guys, before we go off, I mean, I don't really care if we go off, but before you guys leave, do you like this? This can be a little bit of a series. We don't have to draw it out like Roots. Roots was like 16 weeks or something, but do you like building a listing presentation on some of these questions where you can have a repertoire on all these topics? We're going to go and do a buyer presentation. Put it in the chat because I really think this is, and I'll even share some of my answers maybe in some sort of a document, and Matt can share his, and Donna and Louise can share theirs. But I think you should be prepared for these questions. Sherry, thanks so much. We can go off camera. Here's where you want to raise your digital